is miserably self-centered, generally missing unbelievably. He chose to evict me from my own house, all in the name of family. My stepsister, in tiny gem Ash, F29, who can do nothing wrong, has miraculously become pregnant. She struggles to find herself a place to stay, as her highly self-reliant aspirations are those of an escort and an OnlyFans model. Now, Dad wants everything fixed. And I'm the fixer. I regretfully had to part from my house and my hard-earned money with this woman since she made all the wrong decisions. The man my dad openly turned off as a duty several times is me, ever since he learned about my new residence, job, and shockingly low income. Though he has become somewhat sensitive about our shared blood, although I'm not thrilled with him constantly telling me who my father is. He also wants to deepen the ties I have with his wife and her daughter. She is my dad's child as well, but I was banished far too early to establish any type of relationship with the woman. I'm glad I didn't, since I would have been somewhat let down. I simply want to remind everyone before you all start that I'm here to let out my feelings. I have ideas, opinions. As this woman is out there only serving as an escort, sleeping with a bunch of OnlyFans, and my father calls her his pride. You did really read correctly. I suppose he is not familiar with the major deal someone is going to tell him, though I'm not too conservative. I try to concentrate on my morals and profession when I have the time to get to know them better. I court women, there is occasionally a spark, but other elements also play a role, including vast distance and availability problems. Other times, one finds absolutely no understanding. I try not to spend random nights sleeping with anyone. I ought to wait for the proper woman. I get sick looking at a large body count. Guys displaying it like a medal is repulsive. I'm not sure why, still this is what I live by in my own life. Unfortunately, my sister holds the reverse view. She most certainly no longer counts her physical partners. She is now an escort, which personally repels me. Moreover, it is quite harmful as well. Certain guys enjoy performing odd activities for escorts. I have no idea how someone would view working like that as being acceptable. She then posts indecent movies and pictures of herself on the internet in order to profit from it, but she finds little success there. She most likely lacks knowledge on how to start the traffic. But for whatever reason, it is a flop. From what sources am I aware of this? Here is an awkward story. My friend mentioned it to me. She has more plastic in her body than the sea, in a quite terrible voice. She is as real as phony leather. She affects Dad for the worst. She didn't want to raise a child that wasn't her own. Hence I think she was a big factor in my dad not thinking twice before sending me 8 years to boarding school. Let me then introduce you to my dad. Actually, he is more the main cause of all this. Marissa and puffy red-eyed Ash were glaring from the living room and I avoided her. Dad was in the kitchen pulling beers from the refrigerator. He gave me one and I graciously turned him down, fearing what he might say. When I asked him what he wanted from me, he furrowed his eyebrows and answered another question, asking whether I had lately started complaining about us, not sure what he was getting at. I scowled and uncertain. I nodded and turned to settle on a couch across from the two. Ash folded her arms. Marissa rolled her eyes. Dad came in and sat with them facing me, leaving his beer bottle on the sofa table. He leaned back, then he wanted to know whether I was blind. There was a pause, probably bewilderment on my end and rage on theirs. He said before I could reply that I either choose not to notice things that ought to be seen or I am blind. He stated I had most likely become somewhat proud ever since I bought a property, and avoided looking at the individuals who really mean something to me. I groaned and asked him what he meant by all of that, wanting that he would be more explicit. He blew sarcastically, then informed me I wasn't disturbed by the dire circumstances in the room. He stated I had elected not to offer or be of any kind of assistance, and that I had chosen not to notice the family was in risk. I obviously asked him what risk he meant, glancing across at Ash, who rolled her eyes and declared she was pregnant. Like any other person, I wanted to congratulate her, but she started crying before I could. Marissa hugged her and advised me to be concerned enough to find out what's happening at home. Dad stated Ash recently discovered she was pregnant, and the lad who caused it had broken up with her. Since Marissa also mentioned that Ash has decided to maintain it, hence our basis for next decision should be based on that. Can she afford it? All I could say. Ash and Marissa stared deaf at me. To be honest, I meant good. I was worried. I was actually ready to help her, but in my thoughts, I had already imagined perhaps they wanted me to contribute financially. Dad then got up and moved over to my side to sit down with me. That's why he called me, he stated. Afterward, he added that although maybe my mother neglected to educate me how to be a good brother, brothers would throw their life away for the comfort of their sisters. He said he is a nice parent to his daughter. I ask for your effing pardon. I'm not dying for her. But I know my financial input is required. I sighed and asked him what action he wanted me to take about it. He said, "That's my good boy." Grinned, rubbed my back. I forced a phony smile, which vanished the instant Dad said, "You're giving Ash in your house." "No, I am not," Dad answered straight away. "Yes, that's what I said." Dad scowled and asked me why not. I told him I could help with some cash, but the house is mine until she can afford it. I can let her share a room free from rent. Dad got up from his chair, then said, "Nonsense, Dad. It makes perfect sense to me." He insisted, nevertheless, that I not only offer her the house but also move out and buy another for myself. I contended that if Ash is unemployed and expecting a kid, she cannot even afford to run the house or pay the expenses. Those Dad informed me would also be my obligations. Apologize to me? Hell to the number one. Though I was enraged, I had to be polite. Thus, I got to my feet and informed him that it was not feasible and that I would now be departing. I then turned to go. He wasn't content to stop there. 1 week later, he turned up at my place when I was at work. I'm not sure how he entered or where he picked the keys from, but when I returned home, I observed men loading boxes loaded with my belongings outside the house. Hurrying inside, I asked them what they were doing, and they informed me the house owner had told them to toss the goods. I said that they should go right away and that I own the house. They should get my belongings back inside. I lost my composure coming home. This was the last thing I would have predicted seeing. When I went inside to see Dad and Ash, they still stood there, insisting I follow what brothers ought to do. They ignored my advice to leave. Thus, I informed them I will contact the police. They went at last, bad-mouthing me, applying curses and things. Though I know this is a lot to read, it was much worse in person. 1 week has gone by, and I'm posting here since I kind of feel horrible about it. Was I in error? I feel like they need me, and I shouldn't cut them off like this. But I also feel like my actions for them have limitations. Growing up, their disconnection and lack of concern for me infuriates me. Today, they ask me to lay my life down for them. A bit much. Not sure what you mean here, tell me, let me know. I couldn't even get my buddies involved in this right now. You are all I have. Update, hey everybody, I hope every one of you is good. I posted 1 week ago, and to be honest, I didn't expect the attention it attracted. As the comments arrived, some made me doubt a number of things. Not too long afterward, though, I decided not to break off my family completely. This came about via Ash calling me. I welcomed her by telling me she wanted to see me. She wanted to tell me a few things, therefore she asked to meet at my place. But I was still getting used to the scenario made last time. I urged us to meet somewhere else. She was first somewhat nervous. When we visited a coffee shop, she seemed somewhat unlike herself. But generally, she is rather conceited and unpleasant. She told me she had lately been broken off with. As we sat in the corner, I answered, claiming I had an idea since Dad mentioned the man who got her pregnant had left her. She shook her head and said, Dad believes that she told me that although Dad believes her BF left her due to commitment problems, in fact, she is the one with the commitment problems. Unbelievably, right? She said she truly loved this man, but he had discovered some things about her just a few days before she told him she was pregnant. She spoke first, therefore infuriating him. Even though he wanted to address her about those things, in that instant, he became rather insane and drilled a hole in the wall. He frightened her. She claimed he then said he was divorcing her and left without hearing her reply. She has been trying to phone him nonstop, but he hardly reacts. He has only once texted her back, advising her to let the child go first, and inform him he will only talk to her at all then, but she has to part from the child to have that opportunity. Now I know Ash ain't a saint. But this man, this person, really bothers me greatly. She remarked it would be strange to tell a brother about the topics I just questioned her about. I shrugged and stated that it's okay if she doesn't want to tell me, since I kind of realized she was most likely referring to the OnlyFans and escorting. She pulled in a great breath and let it out. Before I could ask her what she wanted to meet for, she then told me she had been engaged in dubious activities. Though I truly wanted to hear validation of all my doubts, I was concerned. She told me she wanted to paint and be an artist, but Marissa informed her she wouldn't get a decent life or income from it. Ash was advised she had to start looking for a man right now. She first felt disgusted, as she soon enough began attracting the attention of elderly guys. She told Ash that it was a good thing when she informed Marissa about it, that is, the older males making any money at all, knowing what to do with their money. At the time, Ash was just 19, and Marissa informed her college she would not or could not provide a decent, pleasant living. Ash had youth, many would have paid for it. Ash resolved she wanted to be a model. She tried several modeling agencies, but none seemed to be interested in her. She then ran into a man in his 40s, claiming he could land her a job. He purchased her pricey outfits and jewels for the functions and drove her to gatherings. She was content till her first gig was mentioned. She turned out, was selling her time to a man in order to pay for a modeling contract. She spent the evening as she assumed it would only be dinner. That was it. She did have a little modeling contract where she photographed a little brand. A few more men used her while she was hoping for a gig in exchange, but she was informed they chose not her. She then discovered that the man making investments in her was actually profiteering off of her. She was terrified he would have her killed, hence she considered it foolish to face him. She then informed him she was fine with low pay and that she no longer wanted to pursue modeling. He fortunately let her depart without any problems. She then attempted to wait tables in bars, and it proved rather difficult for her. Ash's hard-earned money is exactly what that is. Still, she also mentioned that Marissa would make fun of her for opting for those little tasks. Marissa would explain that women should be taken good care of. They are the beauty of this planet, and should just be there to shine and smile like a showpiece, etc. Ash thus began to go out with men just for supper, but she charged for it. She claimed that although many loners out there simply wanted interaction, too many ended up with stalkers and excessive males believing they were owed more than what they had paid for. She started escorting when she realized that interacting with men and having them feel close to her caused more trouble than sleeping with them. It worked great until a friend mentioned OnlyFans. She tried to get it rolling, but her editing and camera handling were not particularly strong. She wasn't social enough, thus that didn't work either. It takes a lot of effort. She next ran across her lover, BF, an ex-coworker. He returned often because he worked as a barista, though he was too clingy. She really liked him. He also lacked trust in her and was a bit possessive, given that she was indeed still on OnlyFans and an escort under his unaware knowledge. He had every reason to question her. Her BF started looking after her with the meager income she made when she stopped escorting and left OnlyFans totally. She seemed good with it. Marissa wasn't. She then fell pregnant, and her boyfriend discovered everything. She mentioned that a couple of the individuals on the list might be possible fathers. Every one of them donated money to help the child and her. One of them had even proposed to her, but she knows all of them are doing so because they believe they are the only ones there, which is silly, given she is an escort. She does not, however, tell them straight out that she pays her expenses and most likely helps with the kid. She said she decided to tell me all this since she couldn't tell Dad. Dad believes she has only been modeling here and there, makes little money, and that she had one man in her life who left her. Marissa mostly understands when he should have stayed. She advises Ash to wed the man who proposed and let him believe he is the father. Ash doesn't know, though, what to tell Dad. She also doesn't want to let anyone believe a lie and wants not to wed the guy since he is strange and ancient. She mentioned that some financial support would be great, and that she wanted me to make up with Dad. I asked her what she wanted me to help with. She advised me to consent to what Dad asked and then spend some time away. I could then return when things are less contentious. How, then, is that a solution? I politely turned down her offer and informed her I could only provide some money. Nevertheless, I wasn't comfortable leaving my own residence. She then informed me I lacked the least bit of decency to assist her out, that she exposed her entire existence to me, and that I was selfish thinking that way. She stated even then Dad was correct about me, and I deserved to be sent to an orphanage instead of taken in when I needed somewhere to live. She stood up and stamped off. Though I believe my response was not too severe. Is it selfish, actually? What do you believe her side of the tale tells? Does it support her expectations? Should I trust she seemed to be speaking the truth, but does it follow that I should follow her advice? Tell me, everyone. Update, right now, this is what is picking at my brain. A few things have transpired after another week. I assumed I would hit the keys and notify you all about it. I appreciate your help on my earlier update, gentlemen. Having folks back up my ideas for once is rather relieving. Still, Dad called me once I met Ash. He wanted to meet with me at the pub to sort out a few things. Interested. I agreed and went to see him. He mentioned he knew how much I was making as we sat at the counter. When I questioned him about why it mattered, he stated he knew I could afford to buy another property in a few years. I shrugged and said I already had a house, thus, this conversation ought to be quite over. He maintained that since I didn't yet have a family, and that single women find it more difficult to raise a child, that child needed a safe place he could call home. I reminded Dad then that Ash had been living with them long enough, and that nothing seemed to be an issue. A small child won't harm. I also asked him what she would do pregnant. Living alone in a big house. She needs to be surrounded by others so that she could be looked after, I remarked. Dad surprised me once again. At that point, he said Marissa and he would move in with Ash into my house. My hearing let me realize something. The bartender laughed sarcastically before I could react to that. Dad objected and inquired about what he found so humorous. He said, Ash, she uses everyone. He remarked, then tosses them away. He nodded, declaring he was her lover. When my dad questioned him about who he was referring to, my eyes opened. So this was the man. Dad balled his fists and asked the man why he felt it was acceptable to establish a family he couldn't sustain. He spoke angrily, holding his hands up. The man informed Dad he had no bearing on the family, an issue he also showed no desire in rearing a child not of his own. Dad pushed him to say why he felt that. He grinned and explained that although Ash still got pregnant, he had a vasectomy last year since he didn't want any children. He also discovered her driving off with several males following her lies on her whereabouts. Then he learned she had an OnlyFans page. He found none of it believable. That was the last straw for him when Ash at last told him they were expecting. He couldn't have a child, hence it verified everything. Knowing this, he told Ash she had been cheating on him all through. She let the truth fly free. While my ears were focused on Dad's voice, all I could see was his face moving from wrath to disbelief to disappointment. He shrugged and informed us. Showed Ash cash money time honesty, at least love. He owed nothing else. He stated he was unsure whether Dad knew any of it, but he knew no dad would be ashamed of a child like that. Dad stiffened his lip, got off the stool silently, and turned away. He texted me later that evening, saying he had to go get Marissa from her yoga session. I'm not sure what happened after that, but I'm sure it was something. As Ash was at my door sobbing the very following day, I wrecked everything. She informed me to stifle a scene. I drew her inside and calmed her down. I told her I told Dad nothing. It was her boyfriend, the bartender Dad and I had visited. Then she told me Dad advised her to stay at home and stop everything. He claimed he never expected she would turn to such methods and felt disgusted by her. He advised her to pick a decent man and straighten her behavior. He also noted that these days her chances of meeting decent men were somewhat limited. I hugged her and listened to her. Dad had just returned from seeing me when he confronted her. So she stated she was sorry. Believing him was me. I forgave her. Then she returned home. She added that Marissa was really quiet when Dad was discussing wonderful women and their loyalty. Like she couldn't say anything while she was raging and telling me how terrible she felt. Ash stated it's among the topics Marissa avoids talking about. She answered that Marissa couldn't have an opinion since she is yoga. So I asked her what she meant by that. I could only grimace in perplexity before Ash carried on crying as she related what else had transpired. Yoga, said Ha, stayed with me. Actually, what do you suppose happened? Mom was really hurt in this quite unpleasant episode, yet even then, she remained courteous and requested Dad for a divorce. My parents separated, y'all. Dad had an affair with my stepmom and got her pregnant. I'm not sure just how much worse this dude could be. Dad stopped and glanced across at me. He stated he had to return me home after spending a good year with Marissa when Mom passed away. Marissa despised every aspect of it again. Driven by guilt or something. She was worried that Dad could put me before their kids somehow. 3 years later, he sent me off to boarding school, and subsequently, I never had to remain home long enough to cause Marissa any trouble. Love makes you do stupid things, he remarked, and I wanted to punch this man in the face, but I restrained myself. Turning back, I found Marissa standing in the gateway, carrying a water bottle. She claimed to be just heading to the yoga class. Setting her bottle on the table, she headed into the kitchen. I blinked. Then she was back and through the door before I could think clearly. Numb, hence I followed her out. I grabbed her water bottle to give back to her. She had already gotten in her car and was leaving when I came out. To help me to relax, I silently sat in my car and gently drove after her. She pulled out from parking outside a yoga club. She turned to glance around her, and then began down an alley. She once more turned around and climbed into another car. She kissed and hugged the driver, and they headed off. I was hardly able to blink. I locked my jaw, parked, got out, and entered the yoga club. When I asked them about Marissa checking in, they denied providing personal information. I insisted I was at least told if she were there, saying I was frightened about her. They informed me they had no customers under that name. I returned to my car and waited. I have no idea what came over me, but I started filming when the second car rolled in. Then slapped her but as she happily headed to the parking lot when a man got out and opened her door for her. Hugged her, and kissed her for yoga. Marissa, so much is different. I left before she arrived at the parking lot. My dad cheated on my mother, thus he is currently being cheated on as well. Karma is. Dad has phoned me several times, but I didn't answer. All I want right now is go and question Marissa about it, so I'm going to see what happens. Should I change? Hello, y'all? I believe this to be most likely the last update, and I know it's a week late. Y'all anticipated it to be sooner, but so much occurred this week. I first managed to man up and approach Marissa. I went when Ash was asleep and Dad was not home. Was she scheduled for yoga that day? She claimed to have it every day, on Sundays included, cooking spaghetti in the kitchen. She was. Who was her yoga teacher? I asked her. She chose a name at random. Was that a guy? I asked her, saying no. She chuckled and asked, why would I take a boy? She had a female instructor at the club she visited. So I told her it was odd since none of the other clubs had female instructors. She corrected me, but her voice startled me. And her hands were no longer swirling the pasta sauce. They told me I had joined the club yesterday. I told her. How could I know where her club was? She asked. I informed her I visited last time following her. She let go of a spoon, I grabbed it, and she spun around. What are you getting at? She asked. I then informed her what I observed. She disputed it. As was natural. I mentioned I saw it with my own eyes. She shrugged and said Dad would never accept me. At least he would believe his own eyes. I told her after pulling out my phone and running through the footage. She stood stunned and spent a minute not speaking. Her face then relaxed, and she carried on cooking noodles. She stated it was useless now. She was already preparing for a divorce anyhow. My eyes grew wide. This woman was horrible. My dad deserved all of it granted, but oh, she's a serpent. She informed me that her sweetheart of 3 years ago is the man she visits at the club. When it was safe to do so, they resurrected their passion. She stated they had fallen in love long ago. But at the time, he was wed to another woman whose father had employed him for his business. Though there was a lot at risk. Marissa and her boyfriend decided he should keep his marriage intact and handle his money. He would then split from his wife and live with Marissa. But Marissa became pregnant, and as women should. She was trying to pin a man down for support. She made that decision to hang around Dad. They were seeing one another on and off, but Marissa chose Dad and told him he had to act. When she met her boyfriend and got pregnant, she had to handle things herself since he developed cold feet, and that's when she spoke with Mom. She's good right now. Her partner is a widower and has a business. She said women should do what they can, kid, and turned around smiling. Her smile stopped, though, as she peered over my shoulder. The next instant, her smile vanished. I turned back to see Dad in the gateway with flaming eyes and clenched hands. He was shaking. Dad awakened Ash then and carried her to the kitchen. Who is her father? He asked. She shook her head and glanced across at Marissa. She assured him she always recognized him to be her dad, thus she didn't give Blood any thought. Pacing the floor, he ran his fingers through his hair. Marissa and Ash were instructed to leave his house. 2 days later, the divorce is underway at a shelter are Ash and Marissa. Dad has requested me to locate him as a therapist, and he has been rather quiet since. I pardon him every single time regarding Marissa. Her boyfriend didn't bring her in. He disputes having ever spoken with her. Marissa has begged me for the proof. I have it. She even begged me to consider Ash through her pregnancy. And what can I say? Marissa, your child. Your challenge. From what standpoint should I act? Either destroy the footage or hand it up. I'll let others know in the comments soon. Later. I appreciate you joining me and for your ideas and encouragement. It means a great deal. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. I departed to start my own business in spite of my parents' opposition. They then tried to take my money and filed a lawsuit against me. I was never liked by my parents. They went to the same college and were infatuated in high school. When my mother found out she was pregnant while still in college, their ambitious intentions to tour the world and see other cultures were dashed. Although they thought about ending the pregnancy, their parents forbade it. My mother eventually left college and moved in with her parents because she was unable to cope with the criticism and rumors from other people. I entered the world in this manner. My grandparents loved me, but my mother hated me. My mother never spent time with me, so for a long time, I thought she was my sister and my grandparents were my parents. When I tried to get her attention, she would either yell at me or ignore me. I was unaware of my father's existence because he was not present during this period. My parents kept dating. I know they didn't want a kid, but I didn't understand why they detested me as a kid. Both of my grandparents were friendly to me, spent time with me, and watched after me. By the time of my father's college graduation, I was beginning to walk and speak. He started coming to see me every weekend because he felt bad about not being more active in my life. I assumed he was merely my grandparents' buddy. My grandparents urged him to get to know me. But my mother detested it when he spent time with me and insisted that he ignore me. That's how I found out he was my dad. He moved in with my mother after proposing to her when he acquired a job. My mother was fiercely opposed to my father's desire for me to live with them so they could care for me as they became older. My grandparents wanted my parents to assume the role. I moved in with my parents when I was 5 years old after they reluctantly took me in. It would be an understatement to say that I detested living with my parents. It seemed as though darkness had taken the place of the light in my existence. My mother threatened to expel me if I did anything wrong and was always reminding me to be thankful that I was still living with them. My dad arrived home late at night after working all day. He insisted that I'd go to bed since he couldn't handle me that day and that he needed time alone. Whenever I wanted to spend time with him, my grandparents used to love me. But now I live with parents who hate me. I knew I wasn't wanted, but I didn't know why. Unlike other children, I never received toys or treats from my parents. On occasion, I would arrive at school with unfinished assignments, and my instructor would call my mother to yell at me for being indolent and to accept responsibility. Because I was so afraid of her, I began to meticulously complete my assignments in the hopes that one day she would accept me. However, she never did. Did my father continue to live in his own universe, unconcerned with my everyday activities or academic achievement? As I became older, I realized the true feelings my parents had for me. I observed that they regarded me differently than other children. I observed other parents embracing, kissing, and grinning as they dropped off their kids. None of that ever happened to me. I had the impression that I was living with strangers. I began to wonder if I was actually their biological child. As a result, I asked my grandparents every time I went to see them, and they confirmed that I was their child. They clarified that my parents simply required more time to grow up. My mother, on the other hand, never sat down to say anything nasty. If I were in high school with you, I would have bullied you mercilessly. It was strange to hear my mother make fun of my hair, glasses, and weight. My mother refused to acknowledge that I had a milk allergy, even though my grandparents were well aware of it. She made me drink milk one day, saying that children in her era didn't have allergies and that I was pretending to have one to be cool. I ended up in the hospital as a result of a serious allergic reaction. She was shaken by the situation, particularly when the police arrived to speak with her. She never gave me milk again after that. She sobbed when my dad yelled at her as well. My recuperation was filled with conversation as my grandparents hurried to the hospital to be with me. My parents' attitude toward me changed after this episode. In the evenings, my dad would spend time with me and put me to bed, and my mother began getting me up for school and helping me get ready. They started treating me like a human being. I'm not sure what happened. Seeing my dad invite me to watch football games with him, or my mom inquire about school was odd but enjoyable. I started to know my parents better in this way. Since I didn't harbor any animosity toward them, I believe I was born with a great deal of empathy. One of my favorite memories of the three of us is going to the beach on the weekends. My parents began to show me some love, and I stopped feeling envious of the children in my class. My mom's mother, my grandma, taught me how to crochet, and when I became 15, social media has become an effective tool for interacting with other artists and exhibiting my work. The digital world gave me countless opportunities to share my enthusiasm with people throughout the world. My little stand at the neighborhood craft show grew into a successful internet business over time. As a co-owner, my grandmother assisted me in opening a bank account with her. I had entire faith in her, and because of her, I was able to put all of my money aside for college when my own parents merely wanted to keep my money for themselves. She had faith in me. My mother once looked through my phone without my knowledge and found out that I had an internet company. We got into a heated argument once she discovered that I was still running it behind their backs. My grandmother and I were both yelled at by my parents. They claimed to have raised and taken care of me all my life and demanded that I take all of the money I had made and give it to them. I almost cried as I tried to clarify that I wasn't hurting anyone and that the money was for my college. My father shouted that he could no longer trust me since I had cheated on them. Standing behind me, my mother insisted that I remove my Instagram page. Instead, I shrewdly canceled my account, intending to restart it after I was no longer under parental control. Then, starting at 9 a.m., they imposed stringent phone limitations until 4 p.m. and 12 a.m. until 8 o'clock in the morning. Additionally, they began following my whereabouts and looking through my online history, sending me alerts if I looked up anything they thought was inappropriate, even harmless things like buying underwear. My parents would phone me and my friends several times if I didn't return home right away after going out with them, something I was only permitted to do twice a week. They forbade me from crocheting with my grandmother, although occasionally I was permitted to spend a few hours with her after school. They threatened to disconnect my phone and internet if I didn't comply. Even though I was just 16 and had no means of escape, there were plenty of days when I just wanted to flee. My parents agreed to let me work part-time at a nearby cafe in exchange for a quarter of my profits. Without protest, I gave them their weekly allotment and sent my grandmother the remaining 75% to be deposited into my bank account. My parents persisted in making my life miserable by frequently entering my room at strange hours to check on me, reading through my emails and chats, and keeping tabs on where I was. I was grounded or made to give them a larger portion of my wages if I disobeyed their regulations. Knowing that getting into a reputable college was my ticket to leaving this existence behind, I concentrated on doing well in school. In spite of everything, I put in a lot of work. I packed everything I had purchased for myself the night before my 17th birthday, leaving behind things my parents had given me, like my phone, to be sure they couldn't follow me or discover any details about my plans. I cleared my phone. I was finally able to move in with my grandmother when she came to take me up early in the morning. When my parents saw me go, they became irate and began fighting with my grandmother, threatening to call the police. Since I was now 17 and could make my own decisions, I told them to go ahead, which served as a clear reminder of how unwelcome I had been in their lives. When they learned about the event, my dad's parents were equally taken aback. They contacted me right away to find out what had happened after they had my new number from one of my cousins. I was honest with them about my connection with my parents and the reasons behind my departure. When they heard about the abuse, they were appalled and questioned why I hadn't contacted them for assistance. I described how my grandparents and a select group of pals were the only people I could communicate with due to parental restrictions. At this point, my dad's parents disclosed that my parents had never desired me at all. After I moved in with them, they believed my parents had changed, but they were mistaken. They pleaded with me to pardon them for their lack of support in order to defend me. They also talked to my grandmother, who told them about the numerous arguments she had with my parents. Following this, my dad's parents decided to tell everyone in the family about what my parents had done. As word got out among family members and acquaintances, individuals began contacting one another to offer their support. I was taken aback by their empathy for my situation. Some even offered financial assistance, but I turned them down and asked them to promote my crocheting business instead. This is how my company started to expand. I received full scholarship acceptance to my ideal college around this time. Finally, a positive change in my life was on the horizon. My grandma lived close to the college, so I could go see her every weekend to crochet or spend time with her. My dad's parents chose to give me their old vehicle as a gift. I was able to see my grandmother more easily because it only required minor repairs. A friend of mine who was employed at a local newspaper contacted me to inquire about writing a piece about me. Since there weren't many young company owners in our community, she believed that my narrative might encourage other young people to pursue their own goals. I gave it some thought and accepted the interview. I hope that if a child out there was trapped in a toxic atmosphere like I had been, they might read my tale and be inspired. But I didn't think it was a huge thing because I still had a lot of work to do on my business. It seemed odd to see my journey highlighted in the paper when the piece was published. Even though it was only a minor accomplishment, I felt proud of the effort I had put into my business in spite of all the challenges. For the first time in a very long time, other family members and friends began to contact me to congratulate me on my accomplishment, and my grandmother was quite proud of me. For me, this was a novel sensation. My parents never encouraged or acknowledged my diligence when I was growing up. My parents called my grandmother and yelled at her after reading the account. They demanded that I publicly give them credit for my business, and accused me of betraying them by going behind their back. They had begun to receive criticism from relatives for their domineering actions. Additionally, they threatened to sue and demanded that I give them a portion of my revenues. I started the business under my grandmother's roof, she told them forcefully, and she challenged them to try to take me to court, which they would undoubtedly lose. I wanted to yell at my parents because I was so upset over their actions, but I knew I couldn't. Instead, I invited my close friends and family to a little celebration that I had planned before I left for college. It was an opportunity to celebrate my business and hard work with people who truly loved me. A time I thought I earned. We had an amazing time. Naturally, my folks heard about it and managed to obtain my new phone number. They began emailing me, saying they wished they had never had me and labeling me an ungrateful daughter. My dad even sent me a lengthy text saying that I was squandering money celebrating with other people while he had spent his entire life supporting me. When my parents celebrated after I moved out, was it inappropriate of me to have a party to celebrate with my loved ones? Update 1. I had no idea my tale would become viral when I uploaded it to Reddit. I noticed that my narrative was making the rounds on TikTok in a matter of days. I'm afraid my parents might learn about this. Please pray they don't for me. Many of you have recommended that I permanently block my parents, and I intend to do just that. To let them know how their actions have impacted me, I would like to write them one last email. Despite what some of you have said, I am not a doormat. Since I'm still a young person and my parents are really toxic, it's challenging to cut them off entirely. No one prepares you for what to do when you have toxic parents and need to break off relationships with them. Despite society's insistence that parents always want the best for us. I know some of you think I'm at fault for allowing my parents to take advantage of me, but keep in mind that I'm still a young person learning how to advocate for myself. Update 2. We appreciate everyone who got in touch with encouraging words and shared similar experiences. As I previously stated, with my grandmother's assistance, I composed an email to my parents. The email's contents are as follows. Dear parents, I've given our relationship a lot of thought, considering its past, present, and possible future. I regretfully recognize that, in order to further my personal development and well-being, I must cut off any contact with you too. I longed for your love during my early years and tried my hardest to live up to your standards. But I was never good enough. I have made several attempts over the years to gain acceptance in your life and to understand why you seem to despise me, but I have never been accepted. From my first recollections, when Mom made me drink milk in spite of my allergies, to feeling alienated in my own house, your behavior influenced how poisonous our family is. Nevertheless, I continued to aspire for a connection that never materialized. With Grandma's help, I discovered a sense of purpose and comfort in crocheting, which I believed could help us connect. But as I developed my company, your attempts to manipulate and discredit me have just strengthened my resolve to leave this poisonous atmosphere. Your attempts to control my festivities, threaten legal action, and insist on taking a piece of my hard-earned money just serve to further expose how toxic you are to me. I want you to know that this choice is not meant to be hurtful or retaliatory. It is a manifestation of self-preservation. A start toward creating a life devoid of poison and full of the affection and assistance that each and every child is entitled to. I don't mean any disrespect to either of you, but I must put my mental and emotional health first. I appreciate you encouraging me to be self-sufficient and undervaluing my abilities. I hope you both find happiness without me and wish you luck in your future pursuits. I ask that you honor my choice to stop communicating. Let's have a friendly separation. I'll admit that while I was composing this email to my parents, I started crying. It's really difficult to cut off your parents. Even though I know I should be tough and keep in mind all the horrible things they have done to me. We are conditioned to adore them as children, and it might be challenging to overcome that mentality. I blacklisted them everywhere after I sent the email. I'm going to college in a few days, and I'm a little anxious about it. My dad's parents and my grandmother will assist me in relocating to my new dorm. Meeting new people and forming friendships excites me. To everyone inquiring, even if I'm a college student, I won't give up on my successful crocheting business. My passion is creating original designs. I'll put in a lot of effort to balance it with my studies. As of right now, this is the only update I have. Update 3. My previous update was 6 months ago. Wow, I'm amazed at how much time has gone by and how my life has changed. Above all, I am doing really well in college. Even though the classes are difficult, I'm working hard to keep my GPA high. Even though my crocheting business is doing well, I am aware that a college degree will serve as a safety net in college. I've also made some amazing friends, and I even received more crochet orders as a result of them. I've been able to meet new individuals and discover new things thanks to college. Compared to the loneliness I experienced at home, this is a welcome change. I even currently date a man named Kyle. We have only been dating for 2 months, and we are still getting to know one another. We'll see how things work out because he's a nice man. I make it a point to go see my grandmother every weekend. We are still working from her temporary workspace to complete our crochet orders. The company is flourishing, and our clients' enthusiastic feedback is tremendous. Following my passion has given me a sense of fulfillment and purpose, in addition to financial stability. It's been a quiet 6 months since my sincere email to my folks. They haven't tried to get in touch with me. According to my grandparents, my parents sold everything and left the nation in search of a new beginning since they felt that everyone was criticizing them. I have no idea where they are, and to be honest, I don't give a damn. It says volumes that they decided to go without making an effort to make amends or even offering an apology. Wherever they have gone,